What up, y'all? Today, we're going to watch a little bit video from the meat queen herself, Mikhaila Peterson, daughter of genius Jordan Peterson. So Mikhaila's TED Talk was never her TEDx talk. TED is like the main TED Talks that are very serious with very serious people, professionals, scientists, stuff like that. TEDx is the one, I could probably get on a TEDx if I wanted. But you have to abide by certain, just like any terms of service. TEDx requires you to keep, hold yourself to a certain standard. And what happened was Mikhaila Peterson didn't do that in any way whatsoever. And we're going to get into it.
Hey guys, as you may know, I did a TEDx talk in the summer about my experience with the lion diet, the all-meat diet that put my autoimmune...
So the lion diet is not a real diet. It is a scam. Miss Peterson is pulling on a bunch of simps. It is not a real scientifically backed diet. It's no different than keto or carnivore or any of these other things. She's just marketing her little flavor of it. $600 to join her group where she basically tells you just to eat all meat.
Disorder that caused crippling arthritis and gave me 2 joint replacements into remission. I followed TEDx's guidelines.
So that right there is her misdiagnosing herself.
Carefully, as I'm aware.
Just as a, to have some sort of anecdotal evidence to go along with her belief system, with her lion diet. It's basically a self-serving story that helps her make money. So there's a very high probability that there's dishonesty going on with the story because she's trying to sell you something.
Where my experience with diet is anecdotal. I finished the talk asking the medical system to look into the diet further. We spent the last 4 months...
She finished that talk saying that because the TEDx requirements basically tell her to say that.
Going back and forth.
If they didn't require her to, she most likely wouldn't have said that.
With TEDx because they won't post the talk. I was the only talk from that TEDx conference that they refused to post.
It doesn't really mean anything.
They said my talk went against their community guidelines, but couldn't name exactly what it went against. And it didn't. Like I said, I was really careful.
No, she most definitely, if you go through, they basically tell you have to be, if you're representing some sort of scientific data, you have to be a scientist. You have to use certain, there are certain things that she just isn't. And her anecdotes need to be backed by science, and they aren't. She didn't use any studies whatsoever in her TED Talk, allegedly. So,
since then, Harvard has put out a study on the carnivore diet that I've linked below.
So, this study. So we're going to look at some stuff on this study. So Harvard. Some students at Harvard, not Harvard, got together and decided to put a bunch of money into studying the carnivore diet. It was just simply a study of some Harvard students did that behavioral characteristics and self-reported health status among 2,029 adults consuming a carnivore diet. So self-reported is the first big issue right here. And this is a case study. If you know what case studies are, they're very low on the hierarchy of empirical data. They're down here. Case studies. Case reports down here at the bottom. Weakest, red down here. Strongest, meta-analysis. The plant-based community has meta-analysis, many meta-analysis over the last 200 years. I can, any day of the week, you can just Google them up and you can find studies of studies And meta-analysis is a study of studies, or a meta-study of studies, basically a study of hundreds of studies, dozens of studies, thousands of people, millions of people, but it's a study of studies. When you have a study of studies, it weeds out all corporate or bad information or errors in certain scientific data pools. It weeds it out when you have when you're looking at dozens of cases and thousands of people. You can kind of see the patterns, and you can weed out the patterns that are likely errors. So meta-analysis is our strongest data. Case reports are way down here at the bottom, literally the bottom. Beyond this is just like conjecture. Down here is conjecture, basically. So we're going to go back. So the Harvard study, a large amount of the people in this study are Dr. Baker's clients. They got a lot of these people in this study off of carnivore diet Reddit pages and stuff like that. And these people are self-reporting. So you're going to get clearly, people misdiagnosing themselves, misreporting themselves, dishonesty, groupthink, which is where, a bunch of people excited about the same thing, they start lying to each other after a while, and they believe each other's lies because they're so excited about the idea. One of the biggest examples of groupthink is the cult of Joe Rogan. Basically, anything Joe Rogan says, everyone thinks is the greatest thing in the world. That's why we have the carnivore diet being as big as it is right now. It's not because science has said anything to prove that it is. It's because Joe Rogan had some guys on that were really buff on steroids. And so everybody wants to be buff. So they believe that we just need to eat meat all the time because that's what Joe Rogan does. And Joe Rogan is the pillar of health, which is all BS. So this Harvard study isn't really the greatest study to be, quoting. So this is from the study at the end. Basically, if Mikhaila Peterson actually read any of the study whatsoever with an unbiased mind, she would have seen all this and been like, okay, this study is BS. So these self-reported data, are prone to recall and reporting bias, especially for the pre-diet information. Specifically, participants may have started a diet during a time of poor health and perceived subsequent regression to the mean as a benefit of the diet, and being online and being online community members may have resulted in over-reporting of adherence and perceived beneficial effects. Basically, you have people misdiagnosing them, people quitting the standard American, being sick. What makes you want to start a diet? Being sick or being overweight. So they were likely eating whatever they wanted, just complete garbage, and were sick because of it. And so changing that diet away from just eating nonstop whatever you want, if you go on any diet at all, you're going to see some sort of regression. And so these people are thinking, oh, I'm getting better because I'm eating all meat. When no, they're not getting better. They're getting better because they've ditched a bunch of garbage they were eating and probably changed their lifestyle quite a bit. So, and then you have these online, the fact that they mention this in the study is great, because this is like something I've been saying for years, the cult of Joe Rogan, groupthink, double speak, it's just like this, just back and forth. These people just tell each other lies. And then that's why when I debate these people and they use this like groupthink on me and I challenge them on it, they're completely blown away when I show them that what they're saying is not true, because they've never actually spoken to another person who knows about this stuff that is on the other end of the spectrum, who's against what they're pushing. They've only been in echo chambers with other cult members. So Yeah, so this in the Harvard study, it says basically this whole study's bullshit. So this is also something that's inside the Harvard study. These findings must be interpreted cautiously in view of several major design limitations. Our survey assessed the perception of individuals following a carnivore diet and did not objectively assess diet, nutrient status, health-related outcomes, or co-founding health-associated behaviors. Basically, they simply just asked these people, hey, is this diet good? And they're all, yeah, and that's it. So, and no physiological or biochemical requirements were obtained. So they didn't take blood, they didn't do anything. They're just simply taking these people on their word. These self-reported data are prone to recall and reporter bias, especially in this is what I just read. So, yeah, so this study that she claims is, a bunch of good evidence for her is actually complete garbage as far as studies go. Complete bottom of the hierarchy of scientific evidence.
Showing other people who have also had success putting their diseases.
And then if you really dive into the numbers, you can see everyone had raised LDL levels, which you're going to all jump down my throat and say LDL isn't a sign of heart disease, but it runs with stuff that does give you heart disease. So, that's why in the past we thought, oh, it's cholesterol that's clogging arteries, but it really isn't. It's stuff that runs with cholesterol and is definitely in the same things in the same food that cholesterol's in. So all these people that went on the carnivore diet had reported raised LDL, and some of their numbers are through the roof. And sure, that in itself, having high LDL isn't, a sign of, is not the actual thing that gives you atherosclerosis, but it is a marker for atherosclerosis. So it's not something that you can just ignore, like all these carnivore dieters are, high LDL's fine. No, it's not fine. It's a marker that your body's getting clogged up. It might not be cholesterol, but it's definitely a marker.
Into remission. This is something that should be taken seriously and looked into. TEDx is supposed to be a place for new ideas and novel thinking and anecdotal reports.
Not necessarily. They have to be backed by science. Yours are not.
They have tons of vegan talks claimed.
Vegan talks that by people that have studies that go along with what they're saying. You do not. You have one case study that is a horrendously low caliber of evidence.
Veganism cures diseases.
Veganism does cure diseases. Look at, for instance, where'd my, is it down here? Okay. It's down here still. So, I don't know where I was going with that. I think I had another, So vegans there's hundreds of years of data showing, like a 30% raise in mortality eating a meat and dairy diet. 30% raise in mortality across the board. With vegan studies, there's a 12% lower risk of mortality across the board, which is like 30 plus 12, 42% healthier than eating meat and dairy. Like, these people have meta studies backing them. You have a case study that you didn't even present in your speaking event, whatever you did.
But my story didn't make it through because it violated community guidelines.
Exactly. So Mikhaila and a lot of these carnivore dieters are trying to say that there's an agenda, a vegan agenda, and that the government is pushing it and stuff like this. But if the government was pushing a vegan agenda, they wouldn't be spending billions of dollars subsidizing the meat and dairy industry. It doesn't really make any sense. If the powers that be wanted us to be vegan, you go to the supermarket and it would be nothing but vegan food. Like, hello, I go there and it's nothing but meat and dairy practically. So I don't really understand this
Cant
whole,
name. So I
oh,
decided to put it up.
everyone's just hates Mikhaila Peterson because of her meat diet. But no, we're just Ted. It like they're holding themselves to a scientific standard that she's just not at.
Here, enjoy.
Hi,
So-
my name's Mikhaila Peterson, and I'm here to talk about how I put my idiopathic autoimmune disorder and mood disorder and chronic fatigue into remission with an extreme elimination diet of only eating meat.
So right off the bat, TED Talks was all, nope, we're not going to do this. Right off the bat, off that, her opening statement is scientifically unprovable. Right there is a guideline that they require to be posting their talks.
But I will start at the beginning. When I was 2, I started walking with my feet out like a duck. And by the time I was in grade 2, I was walking downstairs.
By the way, Mikhaila Peterson has fake breasts, lots of plastic surgery, and puts mountains of makeup on. It seems like if like she's eating this, like her whole thing is this primal diet, wouldn't her diet make her as beautiful as she, like it just doesn't make sense. And then as like someone who would want to like change their body that much, it's kind of like a mental health thing. And it doesn't seem like a healthy thing to do.
There's 1 foot at a time, complaining that my shoes were too small. And I was diagnosed with juvenile rheumatoid arthritis, active in 37 joints. I was put on methotrexate.
Child arthritis, they have no way. They don't know where it comes from. It could be from sleeping on the wrong bed. It could be from you're being allergic to something in the house. They don't really know where it's from. It usually goes away in your teens.
And naproxen to get my symptoms under control, and had cortisone injected into 17 of my joints.
Before we get too much into this, we have no evidence for any of Mikhaila's claims. She's not made public any of her records or anything like this. So we're simply taking everything she's saying as the truth. And she, we have no way of knowing this is true. And she's trying to sell something. So it's like,
In grade 2, I was sitting on a chair in class because I couldn't sit on the carpet, because I couldn't sit on my knees or cross my legs. I was using this really ugly fat pencil because I couldn't hold a pencil because I couldn't close my hand. When I was in grade 4, I was put on Enbrel, a biologic immune suppressant, and I started injecting myself with Enbrel and methotrexate twice a week, and I was put into a medically induced remission, and I went on all the sports teams I could go on. I went from being nearly wheelchair-bound to playing sports. At the same time, my mental health declined dramatically, and I started experiencing OCD symptoms and suicidal thoughts. And I was put on SSRIs and diagnosed with major depressive disorder, potentially bipolar type 2 with hypomania.
Again, we don't know what was going on else in her life. We don't know what her diet was. We don't know what was going on with her family. We don't know what traumas she was going through, if any. There could be so many reasons why she was falling apart. But it doesn't seem like her genetics are that great, because, her dad's a mess. And if this is all true that she's saying, she's kind of a mess too. So that might be one thing having to do with it. But Mikhaila paints everything in a way that blames everything on eating vegetables and fruit, low key. So I'm just giving some context.
When I was in grade 8, I started experiencing the sensations of mosquitoes biting my whole body, and chronic fatigue. And by chronic fatigue, I mean
SSRIs will do that to you. They'll make you have weird sensations and make you definitely fatigued and completely put your body through the ringer. They are immunosuppressants and basically kind of a painkiller that like stops the pain receptors. It's gnarly stuff, really nasty.
I couldn't wake up, and I was falling asleep in class. By the time I was in grade 11, my arthritis had gotten bad enough that it had destroyed all the cartilage in my right hip. And I stopped being able to sleep because of the pain and was put on OxyContin. And when I was 17, I had my hip replaced. While I was healing from my hip replacement, my body destroyed all the cartilage in my left ankle, and I ended up walking on basically broken bones. So I had my ankle replaced, so that was 17. I went off to university, and my mental health deteriorated further. They tried to stabilize me with Wellbutrin, and I ended up having a grand mal seizure at the university library. They tried to stabilize me with an SNRI, and I was so angry I felt like I could claw my skin off. About a year and a half into university, this gets better, I swear. about a year and a half, about a year and a half into university, I was so fatigued that I missed my final exams, and I dropped out and went home. When I got home, I started experiencing a rash on my back and on my bum and then on my face. And when it got to my face, I thought, okay, arthritis is one thing, idiopathic hypersomnia or chronic fatigue is one thing, chronic depression is one thing, but like a rash on my face, I cannot handle that. And I started researching. December 2014, the rash stopped healing. And I went to dermatologist after dermatologist, and they said, stop doing this, you're anxious. And I was like, okay, that's not super helpful. So I figured if I don't figure out what's wrong with me, I'm going to die because my body was destroying its tissues.
So she just said that her aesthetic appearance was worth more than her mental health. It wasn't until her aesthetic appearance started getting affected that she really got serious with this. That's a little weird. Not when she was having mental health issues or arthritic issues. It was once she got something on her face.
At that point, I was on Tylenol 3 to take at night because the shoulder pain was so bad from the arthritis that wasn't kept in check that I couldn't sleep. I was taking 40 milligrams of Adderall just to wake up in the morning because of the idiopathic hypersomnia. I was taking Dapsone, which is an antibiotic used to treat leprosy so that my skin would heal. I was taking 40 milligrams of escitalopram for the depression. I was taking an inhaler because if I got a cold, it would turn into bronchitis, that would turn into pneumonia, and I'd end up in the hospital because of the immune suppressants. I was taking a prescription strength antihistamine because I was so allergic to trees and grass that I was verging on anaphylaxis in the spring. Anyway, there were more. So I started researching, and I came across this rash eventually called dermatitis herpetiformis, which is the skin manifestation of celiac disease, which is an autoimmune disorder that can be triggered by gluten. And I thought, holy shit, is it celiac disease the whole time? So I cut out gluten. I went off of my immune suppressants, which weren't really working anyway, given the fact I'd lost a hip and an ankle. And I started monitoring my symptoms really closely to look for flare-ups. In September 2015, I reduced my diet further because cutting out gluten wasn't enough. And I thought, if I'm going to be doing this for the rest of my life, researching, trying to figure out what's wrong with me, I might as well rule out diet. So I went down to meat and greens and certain root vegetables that I didn't really like carrots, sweet potatoes, parsnips. I cut out all the foods that I thought could be potentially causing inflammation. And that month, my skin healed for the first time in a...
So if you look at any data about arthritis, meat and animal fats is the number one cause of inflammation. So her saying that she tried to stop eating anything that cut out inflammation is completely incorrect, because number one thing they tell you is to eat more fruits and vegetables and eat less meat and animal fat. So that doesn't make any sense right there.
Number of years. I lost 3 pant sizes of bloating I didn't know I had. 2 months into that, my fatigue went away for the first time since grade 8, and I stopped taking Adderall. 3 months into that diet, my depression went away for the first time in my entire life. And I went from living in hell to being in heaven, a hell that I didn't know I'd been living in. And I thought, okay, well, I'm not taking any drugs ever again. And I stopped taking my SSRI over a 2-week period without realizing, because nobody told me, that SSRI withdrawal exists. And for the next 2 years, I had the most horrific experiences of my entire life, and that is saying something. I reintroduced soy a couple of weeks after I went off of SSRIs, and I had a full...
Did you get a soy test first? Why would you reintroduce soy? of all things, one of the most allergic foods to the human body that is consumed normally. Like, that doesn't make, like, did she have a dietitian, or was she just trying this stuff on her own? Like, there's a lot of missing context here.
Full-blown autoimmune response. And it started with my digestion was upset, my entire body got itchy. The next day, my depression was back worse than I'd ever experienced. And I got into the shower and thought, how could I be so arrogant as to think I could control this disease with diet? And I cried. 4 days later, I had mouth ulcers, my arthritis was back, my rash was back. And I got my brother to drive me home from my parents because I didn't think I could drive. And I got out of the car and I went to my apartment, I turned around, and my brother's head looked like that. For about 2 seconds, he looked at me and he went off, and then it was my brother again. And I thought, oh my God, I just stopped taking all my medication and now I'm insane. So for the next year, I went in and out of what I now know was SSRI withdrawal mixed with an autoimmune disorder and food sensitivities, and I had 24-day-long reactions each time I tried to reintroduce a food. About a year after that, I figured maybe I'll just stop reintroducing foods and not experience this. And at that time, I got pregnant, which I didn't even know I'd be able to do given all the medications I'd been on. I went down to Meat and Greens to try and get my symptoms under control. And a year after that, I was breastfeeding, getting out of bed, my wrist buckled. I thought, okay, I have to do something because I'm worried I'm going to drop my baby.
Pregnancy makes your body do all kinds of stuff, so it probably suppressed the pain she was in or whatever inflammation that was having. And a year after that, that would start wearing off. So it makes sense that would start coming back. And she's been on this diet quite a long time at this point. So it's really weird that it didn't just, cure her overnight like she's kind of making it seem like it did.
The arthritis was back. I was itchy everywhere. And I was like, how is this possible? If I'd experienced remission, why isn't that diet working anymore? And I cut everything out except for beef.
Which is the complete opposite. Oh, shit, what just happened? Which is the complete opposite of what any scientific data would tell you to do.
And I cried. 4 days later, I had mouth ulcers, my arthritis was back, my rash was back, and then it was my brother again. And I thought, oh my God, I just stopped taking all my medication and now I'm insane. So for the next year, I went in and out of what I now know was SSRI withdrawal mixed with an autoimmune disorder and food sensitivities, and I had 24-day-long reactions each time I tried to reintroduce a food. About a year after that, I figured maybe I'll just stop reintroducing foods and not experience this. And at that time, I got pregnant, which I didn't even know I'd be able to do given all the medications I'd been on. I went down to Meat and Greens to try and get my symptoms under control. And a year after that, I was breastfeeding, getting out of bed, my wrist buckled. I thought, okay, I have to do something because I'm worried I'm going to drop my baby. The arthritis was back. I was itchy everywhere. And I was like, how is this possible? If I'd experienced remission, why isn't that diet working anymore? And I cut everything out except for beef. And 2 weeks after doing that, thinking I'm nuts and hopefully I don't get vitamin deficiencies, the itch went away and my joints started to feel better. 4 weeks after that, so 6 weeks after an all-beef diet, the depression lifted and I stopped crying in the morning. And 5 months after that, the anxiety lifted and I was back in what I felt was heaven compared to how I'd been living. So that's all beef, all lamb, salt, and water. Now, I've been talking about this diet.
Which, if she was coming out of her, if she was recovering from all these sicknesses on her own, it didn't really matter what she was eating. She would have, been recovering from all these things just naturally. And so, again, we have a possible misdiagnosis of why she was getting healthier.
To spread awareness and in hopes that the medical community can take something like this seriously.
And she's not presenting any of her blood tests during this time. She's not presenting what she was eating, before. She's not presenting what allergies she has. She's just...
My mom went on the diet and her osteoarthritis went away. My dad went on the diet.
You can't tell people to do the number one thing science tells you not to do. Like, what if everyone just goes and starts eating meat who has arthritis when meat products and animal fat is the number one cause of inflammation? Like, that's why her TED Talk wasn't put up, people. You can't just... This is dangerous. Like, this is dangerous. That's why they didn't put it up. Like, you people just think like it's like a popularity thing, and Joe Rogan must be right because he's really cool. So like, like that's not how reality is.
Diet, and he lost 70 pounds. His GERDs went away. He had psoriasis. That went away.
Okay, well, what was his condition before he went on the diet?
I've talked to thousands of people with autoimmune disorders who've done similar.
Where is your mom's records for her arthritis records saying that she miraculously was turned around and everything was fixed.
Things and seen similar results.
We just have to believe this woman who, you know, a lot like her other constituents, Liver King, just purely lie about all this stuff.
So that is me now. That is my kid. I'm a CEO. I'm a podcaster. I try to share my experience to get people.
You're a scammer, and you have a podcast that you just like. You interview people and you just smile and nod and pout your lips out and try and look really attractive.
To see what this kind of diet does for me. I call it the lion diet because
you got a chat that you look at during these interviews and you ask questions from people on the chat.
It's not cool to be this restricted, and it's not cool to have an autoimmune disorder, and people.
Yeah, it's
I followed
disgusting.
TEDx's guidelines very carefully.
It's disgusting to be that
My arthritis was bad. I was
restrictive.
itchy everywhere, and I was like, how is this possible?
Even your father said it's dull. I hate it. And then he went on Rogan and said it cured his depression. But we all know, dude cries at the drop of a hat. He cries hearing stories that have nothing to do with him. Like, the dude cries probably at TV commercials. So clearly he's not very stable, and he's being dishonest about when he says that he cured his depression with the carnivore diet.
And I stopped crying in the morning. And 5 months after that, the anxiety lifted, and I was back in that is my kid. I'm a CEO. I'm a podcaster. I try to share my experience to get people to see what this kind of diet does for me. I call it the lion diet.
Anyone can call themselves a CEO or a podcaster.
It's not cool to be this restricted, and it's not cool to have an autoimmune disorder, and people who are sick feel isolated and miserable. So I'm trying to make it cool, but what would be really cool would be if the medical community could take this seriously and do some case studies.
Case studies? Oh, shit. Okay. Oh, my God. Case studies. Down here. Lowest, weakest form. Weakest forms. See, it's green. That's because that's vegetables. The vegetable studies are all meta-analysis. The bloody dead meat studies are all red down here. Bloody red, gross. Weakest evidence available is the carnivore diet. That's all they have. Carnivore, keto, it's all the weakest evidence. Men's Health magazine, often, every issue they put out, they warn people against keto and carnivore. Science has warned against things like keto and carnivore for hundreds of years. Raising heme iron alone in your diet raises mortality 30%. And that's not counting all the other junk that's in the meat. And I'm not even going to get into the economic, moral, or any other stuff behind this carnivore fad diet that we're going to start seeing people dropping dead from. I have several videos critiquing dudes that are like going to the doctor, and the doctor's like, you're going to die. And then they're going home and telling their carnivore friends, and their carnivore friends are like, you're going to be fine. You're going to be great. It's cool. Rogan's got your back, bro. Like, it's absolutely insane. But the craziest thing, the really is the craziest thing, is the groupthink mentality, the cult of Joe Rogan groupthink, and all this information that these people pass on as if it is true or real or scientifically factual, when it's purely conjecture. It's purely appeals to incredulity, appeals to history, tradition, appeals to the crowd, appeals to authority. There's no real science behind this stuff. So anyway, yeah, so Meat Queen is wrong. I can't imagine what that girl's vagina smells like. Woo-wee! Keto crotch is the real thing, motherfuckers. See ya.